Okay, so let's talk about the PlayStation Portal. I know there's a lot of mixed feelings about this as a handheld that was just released by PlayStation, but I feel like it's a lot of misunderstanding. A lot of people are completely misunderstanding what this device is and how it's supposed to perform or what it was intended for. From what I understand, this is supposed to be an accessory to the PS5. So it's not supposed to be a standalone handheld, which a lot of people think this thing is. It's essentially a $200 remote play device. So a streaming device that will let you control your PS5. Like I said, it's an accessory to the PlayStation 5, just like the PSVR 2. So what it seems like PlayStation or Sony is trying to do here is build a solid ecosystem around one of their most popular consoles ever, which is the PS5. Now, I'm not saying this thing is perfect. I'm not saying that they couldn't have added features that would have made this thing even more than it is, but maybe they're testing out the market. I've had this thing for about 48 hours now, and in all that time, I've been using it to play on my PlayStation 5. I've been using it to remote play from bed, remote play it from the living room, from my office, just different locations to test out how well this thing works. Now, there's some things I don't like about it, and there's some things I like about it. The general idea to me is pretty solid. The general idea of being able to use a dedicated device to stream your PS5 is pretty good. I know you can use other devices that are more capable on the market right now to remote play your PS5, but none of them do it like a dedicated device like the Portal. For me right now, it's the best device I've ever used for remote play. I've used phones, I've used the iPad, I've used Steam Deck, I've used ROG, I used them all, man. I used all of these different devices to try it. I never use remote play because it never works out as well as I want. Now, having this device has made me want to use remote play just a little bit more because all I gotta do is pick it up just like I would pick up a controller, like a DualSense controller, and I'm right to it. It's right there, set up for it. It's pretty solid for what it was built for. And it's only going to get better because honestly, this thing is almost like a sign of what's to come in the future. They're probably already working on something that's going to be a standalone device that can run your PlayStation games, something completely different that's not an accessory. So the Portal comes packaged in a decent sized rectangular box, and just like other accessories made specifically for the PS5, you'll notice that it also says on the box that it requires one to be useful at all. Inside the box, you'll find one USB-C cable, the Portal itself, and some paperwork. As soon as I took out the Portal from the wrap, it instantly felt like I was holding onto a DualSense controller, and those are already known for their really nice ergonomics. It also uses a pretty unique and interesting design where it looks like a DualSense controller was stretched apart at the center and a small tablet was inserted in between. It's like using a DualSense controller with a small screen built right into it, which means ergonomics on the Portal is just as good as it is on the DualSense. PlayStation even kept the texture and the colors consistent with the OG PS5 DualSense controller. This shows even more to me that it's just another accessory that was built for the PS5, just like the DualSense controllers. For size reference, I decided to place it alongside a Steam Deck, and they looked very similar in size. The Steam Deck does way more than the Portal, but it's not by a lot. Both devices are very different things in very similar bodies. One is a full-blown PC while the other is an accessory built specifically for the PS5. As for buttons, the front side is pretty much identical to a DualSense controller. Top side, there's a power button, a link button for Sony's proprietary technology, and some volume controls. Besides those, there's bumper and trigger buttons as well as speakers on the ends up there. Underneath the screen, there's nothing at all, but behind it, there's a 3.5mm audio jack for wired headphones and a USB-C charging port as well. When you first power on the Portal, it runs you through a very quick and a seamless setup process involving connecting to your home Wi-Fi and setting up remote play between the PS5 and the Portal. Once that's done, gaming on the PS5 using the Portal becomes only a few clicks away every time. I'm not sure if the Portal works when connected to phone hotspots, but I tried connecting to my phone's hotspot multiple times to see if the Portal could be used away from my home Wi-Fi, but it never worked once. I'll have to take it to a different location with a different Wi-Fi to try it out again sometime. Usually, remote play when used on smartphones or any other supported devices lets you access the PS5 away from the home as well, so I'd expect the PlayStation Portal to be able to do this. The Portal has a user interface that's very similar to what you would see on the PS5, and when connected, it takes over the entire user interface of the PS5 itself. The screen has touch functionality that also acts as a touchpad on the DualSense controllers when in remote play mode. Personally, I don't like how it works, but it's there. The UI of the Portal when disconnected from remote play is pretty basic since the device only has one feature, which is to remote play. In the top right corner, there's the settings menu, current time display, battery level, and Wi-Fi signal strength. Within the settings menu, there's an option to connect to the PS5 that you have linked to the Portal or to Sony's proprietary earbuds if you decide to get those along with it. There's also brightness level controls, an airplane mode toggle, and another settings menu. Within the second settings menu, there's network settings for Wi-Fi, system settings for personalization, and controller settings for vibration intensity, and etc. There's also controls for the brightness of the LED accent lights on either side of the controller and the mute button on the top right side of the right controller. Once the Portal is linked to a PS5, jumping into a gaming session only requires pressing the power button and then unlocking the device using the PS button. Once unlocked, it connects automatically to the PS5 it's linked to, and all you have to do at that point is press X to gain remote access to your PS5. This whole process probably happens under 5 seconds, which is pretty amazing and quick. Okay, let's talk about that small tablet nestled between the two halves of the controller. It's an 8-inch Full HD LCD screen that can deliver up to 60 frames per second at up to 1080p resolution. The display quality might not be anything mind-blowing at all for most people, but it definitely looks pretty good. Colors look nice when the stream is in 1080p and the gameplay runs smoothly when playing at 60 frames per second. One thing to keep in mind though is that the PS5 can output games at up to 120 frames per second, but the Portal is limited to 60, so games that support 120 frames per second won't be playable in that setting on the Portal. Honestly, I find that this could be a good thing as more frames will mean more bandwidth, stressing the already struggling Wi-Fi connection that most people are going to have to use. Gaming on the Portal can be incredible sometimes, and other times it can be pretty annoying, and most of that annoyance comes from the fact that it requires a strong and a stable Wi-Fi connection to be of any use at all. It comes equipped with Wi-Fi 5, which is quite underwhelming to be honest, considering it solely depends on Wi-Fi tech for all of its functionality. Wi-Fi 6 or Wi-Fi 6E would have clearly been much better options for a device like this. To get the best connection between the PS5 and the Portal, you have to make sure that the console is hardwired using the Ethernet port on the back. Connecting it to Wi-Fi will provide a much worse connection than when wired, and trust me, you want to avoid that if you want to play with any kind of decent graphics or frame rates. I use 1 gigabit internet with Wi-Fi 6 routers scattered across my house, and I've always struggled with getting PS Remote Play to work smoothly on all of my devices. The Portal connects the easiest and with the least amount of fuss. It also provides the lowest amount of latency during gameplay, making remote play more usable for me with my current internet setup. I wouldn't ever suggest using remote play for certain kinds of games, but it's amazing how well it actually works for RPG games. For car racing, first-person shooters, or competitive online games on the other hand, the latency could quickly become a huge disadvantage. Playing Spider-Man 2 was pretty good with occasional stuttering here and there, but it was still very much playable. I noticed that they were much more predominant around fighting scenes, and sometimes there were even artifacts and the resolution would go under, which made visuals look very crappy. The same thing happened with God of War, which is another RPG game that's not very dependent on latency, so this was fun to play on the Portal as well. For an FPS game like Cyberpunk 2077 on the other hand, it was much more difficult to play with those stutters and latency. I can only imagine it'll be much worse playing competitive online games like COD or Apex and having to deal with all of that. I think the Portal works best when playing on your home Wi-Fi network with very little traffic. If you plan on traveling with it, just keep in mind that a strong Wi-Fi connection is required to get some decent game time in wherever you go. The connection definitely won't be the strongest at somewhere like a coffee shop, for example, so make sure that you understand that if you're thinking of this as a travel device. The PS Portal can only stream from the PS5, which still does all of the heavy lifting, so that means it doesn't use up battery as quickly as devices with native game installations like the Steam Deck does. This also means that battery life isn't dependent on the game being played and drains more consistently throughout. The battery can last somewhere between 6 to 9 hours, which I think is pretty solid for what the Portal is. On the other hand, it takes about 2 hours to go from 0 to a full charge using the supplied USB-C cable. As for cooling, don't expect the Portal to need much of that, since again, it is a streaming device, so you won't be hearing any loud noises from fans or anything else inside of it. I've always found that one of the greatest advantages of game streaming is being able to leave the heavy lifting to another device that's at a different location. One of the biggest disappointments of the Portal is that it doesn't support Bluetooth connectivity. This is probably the most popular method of connecting external devices these days, so omitting that from the Portal also means that any device that uses Bluetooth as its only means of connection won't be usable with it. This also includes Bluetooth earbuds, so if you want private listening on the Portal, you'll have to use a wired headset or buy earbuds that support Sony's PlayStation Link proprietary tech. So far, there's been different explanations as to why the Portal uses this system, but for me personally, I feel like they should have also included the option of Bluetooth on a device like this. Essentially, it won't work with anything else besides PlayStation devices and wired headphones, which to me is a complete bummer. Now that we've checked out the Portal, let's talk about if the Portal is worth it and who it's for. First off, it's priced the same as the PS5 DualSense Edge controller at $199 US, which might be steep for some considering how limited the functions of the Portal is. For others, the price may just be right if the one feature of the Portal can solve a problem for them. A lot of people tend to misunderstand what it is and who it's designed for, and I'm sure the reason for that is because of the crazy influx of Windows PC handhelds into the market throughout the year. For anyone that's still confused about what the Portal is for and who it's meant for, I'd like to clarify that it is not a standalone device by any means whatsoever, let alone a standalone handheld PC like the Steam Deck or the ROG Ally, for example. It's been designed as an add-on to the PS5 ecosystem, just like the DualSense Edge controller or even the PSVR 2. As for whether it's completely useless, now, that will have to depend on the user. Not everyone will find the Portal to be useful, just like any other device out there. I still don't see myself using remote play very much, even with the PS Portal, as I never did in the past. I never have my TV occupied when I need to use it with the PS5, and I also prefer to play on the big screen to avoid any sort of gameplay stuttering or latency. I'm sure there's people with better internet setups than me that will have much better luck with game streaming, but my setup is decent enough and I still can't ever get a lag or a stutter-free session even with the Portal. For someone who has kids or a partner that tends to take over the main TV that's connected to the PS5, the Portal can be a solid, dedicated alternative for keeping up with gameplay. It could also be worth picking up if you like to play a PS5 around the house, like maybe while you're in bed, for example. You probably already know by now that any decent smartphone or tablet can also use the PS Remote Play app to do the same thing as the Portal, so the value for a device like that isn't too high. I believe it's perfect for anyone who wants a device they can use solely for remote play, which has been optimized for that purpose, and the Portal does not disappoint. Overall, I do think that it functions very well for what it is, with some downfalls, of course. I love the transition of the DualSense controller's ergonomics and design to the Portal, which makes it great to use even for long periods. I also love the controller's use of haptics and adaptive triggers and how seamlessly the PS5 and the Portal setup works when used together. On the other hand, I'm not a fan of needing Wi-Fi or a PS5 console to even use it at all. I'm also not digging the lack of Bluetooth and the use of only Sony's proprietary PlayStation Link technology, which limits the Portal even more. Finally, media apps on the PS5 are all blocked and will not work on the Portal, so that big and bright 8-inch display is only useful for gaming. I did notice that it can receive updates from within the settings menu, so maybe, just maybe, they can make this thing better by adding some new features, like for example, being able to access PlayStation Plus for online game streaming. This could easily eliminate the need for a PS5 to use the Portal, and I'm sure a lot of people, including myself, would appreciate having something like this added to the Portal to really expand its uses. So far, it's been a mixed experience for me using the Portal, where sometimes I love it, and other times I'd rather just get on the main console and a large 4K TV for the best experience. Let me know down in the comment section if you would consider getting the Portal and why. And if not, also share your reason down below. That's all I've got for you guys in this one. If you made it to this point, I appreciate you watching, and I will catch you all in another video. It's Tommy, and I'm out, y'all.